Did you see
Yeah.
that there's some people did a experiment with AI where they put somebody into an MRI and then they told them to think about, in this example, I think it was a
Mm.
giraffe,
Yeah.
and then they tracked how the blood flowed in the brain and mapped it, and then had the GPT tool, I don't know what they were using, the AI tool describe in text what the person was thinking about, and it got it.
Yeah. I
And
heard
so
it can
okay,
already
so
read
then
minds.
that's what I'm saying. And so then, when we're going to be at this place, so say the post-terrestrial humans that are going to be in space are going to be set up with something like a cybernetic suit that's going to be exoskeleton, but also like some internal, like some neural link things. And so it's going to be monitoring like all of your biological systems, including blood flow in the brain. Then AI is going to be able to map it. And then you and I are going to be able to talk. And then as I'm trying to describe something in my head, it's going to generate an image that you're going to see. And then I could be like, oh, yeah, it's like that, but it's a little bit different. And then you can like
Modify it.
define it different, and then you can show. And so we're going to be able to start communicating in images.
Hmm.
And then the other thing that's going to happen too, I mean, Rogan's been talking about this forever, but it'll be able to detect if there's a lie in there. So like if you're saying like, yeah, so I was hanging out with this girl, the other night, she was like super hot, and then you have an image in your head and you memory what the girl was, and she was not super hot. And then the image comes out of the person that you're actually thinking of. I know something like that, where it's
Yeah.
like there's this new realm of transparency and permeability of the inner state that gets, and then it's like I can be thinking about something and then it shows up in your head, and then you can be like, oh, I'm thinking about something. Like, so like what if we both went on a hike or something, like went to Half Dome or something? We're both on this hike, and then we're remembering the hike, and then I'm remembering things that I saw, you're remembering things that you saw, and then we're both remembering at the same time, but then we have these different moments,
Hmm.
right? That it's going to be a really interesting, it's just going to be like a new dimension. And then AI is going to be able to like bring all these things into higher and higher resolution. Like one of the things that I'm been researching now is like I have all these old terrible photos of my work from back when I couldn't afford like a photographer to shoot stuff, and I just had like a shitty, second generation digital camera. But now you can have these AI tools that you can bring them into higher resolution, and I can get
Hmm.
like actually decent pictures out of them. So then imagine that technology with what we're talking about now, this neural imaging system that's just bringing your ideas into higher and higher resolution, and then
Yeah.
you're able to put that out into the world. I don't know. You just start thinking about this stuff, and you're like, where is it all going to go? And you don't really hear anybody talking about like this. It's always like chaos GPT is going to destroy the world or like all this stuff. And you're like, I don't know, like, yeah, there's not really a whole lot of like astounding takes on what's happening with AI. Like, what have you heard recently that's the most impressive takes on where AI is going?
I haven't really heard any impressive takes lately, to be honest.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like everyone seems to be in this like holding pattern now where we're just wondering and watching it and seeing what's going to happen.
Yeah.
Because there's that idea of the singularity that we're going to hit this point
Right.
where the AI is advancing so much
Hmm.
that it's smarter than human beings and it's learning so
Hmm.
fast that anything
Hmm.
after that point we can't predict. So I'm only seeing like kind of two binary sides right now. One is AI is going to be amazing. It's going to do all these great things. It's going to help us with our jobs. It's going to help us learn like ChatGPT. And then the other side is Elon's side right now, which is it could destroy civilization. But I'm not really hearing a lot of nuance in the middle because I think it's happening so fast right now that I don't even think that we understand what's already been released. Like, and the depth of that. Like
Yeah.
just the depth of Chat GPT as it's been released. It
Hmm.
runs unbelievably deep, and we're only just scratching the
Yeah.
surface of it. So
We were so there's this book, Irene and I were reading this book from the 30s by this author, last name's Shin. And he talks about the game of life and how like the rules of the game of life are like written in the New Testament. And it's like it's really amazing. But she talks about the imagination being the scissors of consciousness. And we were reading that, and I was like, okay, like I've never heard that before. I've never heard somebody say the imagine, and the sentence was, it's been said that the imagination is the scissors of consciousness. And I was like, it's been said. I mean, I'm pretty well read in this stuff. I've like never heard that before. Have you ever
yeah,
heard that?
no, what does it mean? Like
Okay.
that it cuts
So
something in half, or like that it shapes through cutting?
yeah, let me see if I can bring it up on my history. So we were talking about it, and they're like, well, it could be this, it could be couple of different things. Oh, so I told Irina, I was like, well, let's ask Chat GPT. And
Yeah.
I'm like, because in the Chat GPT sometimes surprises you because you're like, this is deeply metaphorical and abstract and kind of poetic. And you would think like any sort of adequate explanation of this would have to be supremely human, because it's so abstract.
Yeah.
So it's actually okay. It's called the scissors of the mind. The imagination is the scissors of the mind, not scissors of consciousness. So I asked ChatGPT, why do people call the imagination the scissors of the mind?
Hmm.
And this is what ChatGPT said. Scissors of the mind is an interesting metaphor that may not be universally recognized, but it can be interpreted as a way of describing the role of the imagination in the human's mind. Here's an explanation of the metaphor. Scissors are a tool used to cut and shape various materials, allowing us to create new forms and designs. Similarly, imagination is a mental tool that allows us to cut through the boundaries of reality and explore different ideas, scenarios, and possibilities that go beyond our immediate experiences. It enables us to create new concepts, form connections between seemingly unrelated ideas, and envision different outcomes. Using the metaphor of scissors, the imagination can be seen as a mental instrument that helps us dissect, rearrange, and manipulate information and experiences. It allows us to reshape our understanding of the world, giving us the ability to innovate, problem solve, and dream. So while the phrase scissors of the mind might not be widely known expression, it highlights the pivotal role that the imagination plays in human cognition, creativity, and problem solving.
That doesn't
I
really
was just like,
I don't know if that resonates with me though. Like I think of
but I mean, technically, it's like making a quilt, right? So it's like, well, okay, yeah, you go ahead, go ahead. Like, what do you mean? It doesn't really resonate with you?
yeah, like I think imagination doesn't seem like something that's like cutting things up to me. It seems like something that's connecting different disparate things. Like I would think that rationality is the scissors of the mind because that's what discriminates, that's what separates and puts things into categories, cuts them apart. But the imagination seems to be like it's imagistic and it comes to you as whole images. It doesn't seem to be the thing that's cutting between things.
I know, but regardless of what, so I hear you, and I don't disagree with you. But regardless of what you think the metaphor is, the metaphor was used in this book.
Yeah,
And the metaphor in this book was used the way that ChatGPT described it.
yeah,
So whether or not that's accurate, it was the way that it was used in this book. And
yeah.
so I just found that was astounding. I mean, it was honestly, it was like one of the more impressive things that I've seen it do. Cause I was like, thinking beforehand, I was like, yeah, I mean, I could make a metaphor out of it. And, but I don't know what it is in use, especially if it's been used in the past. Like if there's like a literary precedent that's in text form somewhere in the history of whatever Google Books archive is. Or anyway, so I saw that, and I don't know, I thought it was pretty impressive myself, but
Yeah. Yep.
um but yeah, I don't know. Yeah, there's been a couple of things like I think that one of the things that people miss with AI and the experience of art, people are often saying like, well, I guess artists are just out of a job now.
Yeah.
It's like, as far as digital assets go, that may or may not be true. It could be true. But when it comes to the experience of something in real life, where you have an encounter with a piece of art, a handmade piece of art that's hanging on the wall that gives you a feeling, my assumption is that even if you printed out one of these AI generated art pieces and printed it out and hung it on the wall, I mean, so much of it is based on what's the room like, what's the scene like, what's the city like, what's the, what's going on from a contextual standpoint. And then like, what is the material like? Can you tell that it's digital? Like, does it actually have, consciousness in it? Like what we've discussed before with like Van Gogh and Da Vinci, it seems to be that some piece of their consciousness is in the artifact, in the painting that hangs in the museum. And my assumption, I've never seen a piece of AI generated art in real life. I've only seen it through a screen. And, it's always some of it looks cool.
Yeah.
But I've never gotten like a feeling from it. And so I think the power of art when it's done well is that you have an encounter with it and it gives you a feeling, because it's the humanity that's in the art connects with the humanity of the viewer, and there's like a synergy there of some sort that evokes an internal experience. And I don't see that happening anytime soon with Midjourney or Dolly 2 or anything like that. So I don't know. What's your read on that? Do you think that that's just an inevitable domino to fall, or do you think do you think anything remains sacred with
Yeah,
AI?
that's a good question. I think we're already there. I think that I could generate an AI work of art that would make you feel something. Now, it
Yeah.
might not make you feel the same depth as looking at Da Vinci's Annunciation,
Hmm.
but it could still hit those archetypal chords. And I think it will get better and better at it because
Yeah.
it's studying the whole corpus of art, and humanity has already ranked the best paintings and the best painters.
Yeah, I guess
So,
that's
so we
true.
have a training model to tell the AI what is the best type of painting to make someone feel something. So I think it'll automatically hit on those archetypes, but whether it will reach the level of a human artist, I'm not sure. And
So
I think it's going to be derivative to start off because it's
yeah.
creating a painting based on ideas of other paintings, not from
But
revelation.
that's all of art. All of art is derivative of the art that came before it.
Well, it is and it isn't, because as an
Yeah.
artist, you go through this period where you are derivative in a way. Like a lot of artists go
Hmm.
through this period of imitation where you've got your heroes as artists and you're kind of imitating them. Like I felt myself as a writer doing that. Like I was
Hmm.
imitating Bukowski or imitating Kerouac or imitating Marcel Proust. But
Hmm.
then you hit a point where you go beyond that and you create something original. And that comes to you as a revelation. It doesn't seem to be derivative. And that's what I'm wondering is like, can AI have a revelation of something truly original that would create a work of art that would like plumb the depths of our feeling and like bring a new feeling out? Like not just an existing feeling that
Well,
someone's felt before, but like draw something new out.
like how we were talking previously that you know th- I I resonate with the idea that Van Gogh's paintings, the canvases, have a piece of his consciousness in it, a piece like some sort of like fractal resonance that's emanating out from the paint and the canvas.
Yeah.
And that when your consciousness gets into proximity with that perceptual proximity, like the Venn diagram of what it is radiating its being and what you are perceiving that being. There's like there's a mode of perceiving Van Gogh's consciousness
Yeah.
from that painting. Okay, so now take away the painting of Starry Night. Say you're not seeing Starry Night anymore. Now you're just seeing a photograph of Starry Night, and that's on a computer.
Yeah.
Now, is Van Gogh's consciousness still in that Starry Night? If so, if AI is sourcing Starry Night, the sunflowers, irises, all of that stuff, and then creating a new image, but it's not just the arrangement of photons and binary bits that make up the image. It's also got bits of Van Gogh's consciousness in the digital as well. So then, if that's the case, then AI would actually be rearranging fields of consciousness in imagistic form, presenting it to a viewer, and you very much could get a feeling of art from that because the consciousness is in it.
Yeah. And like you
like
said,
a holographic model, kind of.
yeah, like you said, Van Gogh, when he does one of his paintings, that he's somehow putting some of his consciousness into it. But an AI, in a way, is able to put all of our consciousnesses into it, or many consciousnesses.
Yeah.
And it's not doing it consciously, but
Right.
it's able to pick up from thousands of different artists and put something together. So we've been talking about AI generating a digital work of art and then printing it out and putting it up on a wall.
Yeah.
I think part of what puts the consciousness of the artist into the art is the paint itself and the physicality of the canvas. So what if you had an AI that studied paintings deeply? Like, how they have those scans where they
or
can
3D printing.
Yeah, like
a
they
sculpture,
can
3D
scan
sculpture.
the structure of a painting and scan like the thickness of paint, the brush strokes, and then you had a robot actually paint. So it doesn't start as digital. It starts with physical paint on a canvas, but it's a robot doing it. Like, would that deepen that level of that somethingness that's in there?
Well, I think we don't even have to go that far, because when you think about cinema, right? Think of just like a projector projecting photons onto a white wall screen, and then you see like
Yeah.
Robin Williams as Patch Adams or whatever, and you can see like the essence of Robin Williams that's like one of a kind human, that nobody else is like that. And then that's coming through, is somehow the essence of Robin Williams, his humanity, is being shared with us. And if you follow that train of expression from my eyes are picking up the photons bouncing off the screen that are coming from the projector, that are in the celluloid, that was reproduced but originally captured in a camera, and it was capturing him, like somehow that can carry it all the way to my perceptual mechanism, where I can be completely entranced and be like, oh, I know this person.
Yeah.
There's something about consciousness that has a through line through all of those mediums that affects me.
What if I used an AI to study all of Robin Williams's work, every film he's ever been in, every scene that he's been in, and I asked the AI to generate a new scene of him, and then you watched that scene and it gave you a sense of his soul as well? Like, how are we gonna know?
I think that would work, man.
Is anything sacred anymore?
It would.
I don't know.
Okay, well then we have to define sacred. I don't know. Give me a definition of sacred in your. Let's ask ChatGPT what sacred is.
Yeah.
No, what do you think? Let's do it. Let's do that as an experiment. Why don't you define sacred? I'll define sacred, and then we'll ask ChatGPT what it is.
Say, when I think of sacred, I think something of divine import.
Okay, so just divine import?
Yeah.
Sacred. It has something to do with, it's like a rarefied quality we attribute to a thing that is not to be defiled. It has something to do with the individual's ego, in order for something to be sacred, you have to leave it alone. It has to do with sovereignty. Like when something is sacred, it's sovereign. It's like you shouldn't touch it.
Yeah.
Like
Yep.
maybe like the Ark of the Covenant is like the ultimate sacred, or the ultimate sacred thing,
Yeah.
to
If
the
you touch
extent
it,
that
you
if you
die.
touch it, you die.
Yeah.
And
Yep.
so when we say like, is nothing sacred anymore? It's like, well, we're trying to defile everything. That's kind of what it is to be human, right? Like we're built to turn over every rock. And if the whatever it is that's sacred is kind of just another rock. I mean, there's really nothing in this world that we haven't touched if we can, you know?
Yep.
So ChatGPT defines sacred as, the word sacred refers to something that is considered wholly divine or highly revered, often in the religious or spiritual context. Sacred objects, places, or ideas are typically associated with deep respect, veneration, or awe, and are often believed to possess a special connection to a higher power or transcendent reality. The sacred is generally treated with reverence and is set apart from the ordinary everyday things, as it is believed to hold spiritual significance or embody religious or spiritual principles. So that was definitely more in line with what you said than what I said.
But I think what you're saying relates to it as well. It seems to have to, it has some sovereignty. Like
Yeah.
it mustn't be touched.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like you don't swear at your mom kind of thing, right? Or like there's just certain things that you just don't do. um
And I think over the next few years,
yeah.
we're going to see people use AI to generate art on a big
It's probably
scale.
gonna be really good too,
Like right
actually.
now with like Mid-Journey and DALL-E 2, we're just seeing like small bits of pixels on a screen. But wait
Yeah.
till it's able to produce a mural on the side of a building that's just huge and so detailed that we can like look at it in a physical space.
Yeah, but somebody has to be prompting it to do that.
Yeah, yeah, that's the thing, and maybe that's. But I hate it that that's become the art, is just
No,
prompting.
I don't actually. Because even at the end of the day, it's gonna do something, and then the individual, if you're a real artist, you're like, oh, that's cool, but it's not quite the way that I want it. Like I want to
Exactly.
fix this over here, I want to make this blue over here, I want to. So even when you talk about the real gift of what artificial intelligence is doing, is it's alleviating a workload, right? So when you think about it doing finances or taxes or reading contracts, or it's really an assistant. So it assists you in doing some of the drudge work. So
Yeah,
even if you're doing this mural, sometimes I've thought, could I have one of these AI assistants like do a mural like something I've done in the past, but make it green and replace circles with triangles or something
yeah,
like that, and
yeah.
then throw it up there and be like, okay, well, that just saved me about 5 hours of coming up with some design. And now I can modify it to make it my own, really. I mean, even if it's based on my work, it's kind of my own. I don't know. I haven't really thought about it too much, but
But I think
and then
if you did that, I think it might be restricting you in some way, because
yeah.
it's giving you it might restrict revelation because it's already giving you a starting point. Like for example, if I asked ChatGPT to write a movie script for me, and let's say I already had an
Hmm.
idea for a movie I wanted to create, and instead of just
Hmm.
writing the script, I went to ChatGPT and scene by scene went through it and said, generate this scene, generate this scene. And I, like you said, I would look at it and say, oh, I kind of like this, but it's not exactly what I want. And then I would tweak it. But because it started showing me some of those ideas, it's pushing me down a path in a way. And I can
Hmm.
say no to all of that, but I wonder if that restricts divine revelation, like a
See,
revelation that comes to you completely of something original and new. And if using the AI to start with something and then tweak it is getting in the way of divine revelation.
Yeah. No, and I thought about that too. And the way that I would do it is I would frame it as a collaboration, right? So like I've done collaboration projects where I collaborate with my past self. So I have like pieces of art that I've done like 20 years ago that now I look at it and I'm like, well, if I were to do it now, I'd make these changes or these changes. And,
Yeah.
and so then I just do. And I'm like, oh, wow, that's interesting that I'm past Nathan is did something that I thought was done.
Yeah.
And then now new Nathan is collaborating. So now I'm like doing now my consciousness is stretching out through time. So now there's another material that's at play in the piece. And that actually makes it interesting because now there's like new energy that comes in and then there's revelation that way because of the frame. And so that's what I would do too, because I've already thought about this. So I would collaborate with an AI to understand it and myself better, and the art piece would be collaborating with AI. Like if I were to do something like that, I would make it part of the process. In the same way that, like I collaborate with clients sometimes, where they hire me to do something, but then they're like, could you use like these colors? Is that cool? And and if it is cool, then I'll be like, yeah. And then as soon as I do that, it's now I'm in a collaboration mode and I have to think about it as collaborating because that's what's authentic to the art itself, because it is what it is,
Yeah.
so
Yeah. But
anything.
how authentic is the art though if the ideas for the art you're getting from a machine?
I
Like,
don't, but see, here's
and
the
that's
thing,
why
man.
like I've been hesitant to use ChatGPT
Yeah.
for script writing because I don't want to get my ideas for movies from an AI. So I don't have, and I've used ChatGPT to generate scene ideas, but I don't want to look at them because I'm like, if parts of them end up in my script, were they really my idea? And is
I
it
don't
really
even know that my
original?
greatest ideas are my ideas anyway. Like
Yeah,
I
where do
sometimes,
ideas come from?
yeah, where do ideas come from? I have no idea. Like I oftentimes the most common perspective I have about my own work is that I'm an audience member watching what's coming out of me because I don't relate to my own work in the sense that I feel like it's me, even though everybody else is like, oh my God, your work is so you. And I'm like, yeah, it's a surprise to me every time it comes out. So where is this coming from? And I think, even my great spiritual revelations have all been from the perspective of, oh, who it is that I think that I am is actually the illusion part. And who it is that I actually am, or whatever the higher consciousness that's coming to me is from this other source.
Hmm.
And it doesn't seem to be me because I can't find the me in it. And if it is me, it's a part of me that I don't understand or I don't relate to because I can't locate it inside of me. And so maybe I'm just a conduit for these, you know, higher, God forces, beings that are just using me like a nib on a piece of paper.
Yeah.
And even though I end up being like this stained glass window that the light shines through, I'm not the light and I'm not the surface that it shines on. And I'm not even the stained glass window. I'm somehow the arrangement of the pieces and I can move them around, but how I move them around isn't anything that I can locate inside of myself. And so there's a part of me that looks at this AI thing and I'm like, well, it's not like if I'm a divine conduit for this thing that I can't relate to, does it matter that it's coming from AI? I don't know. And maybe it's more beneficial for me to explore that realm to get a better idea of who it is that I am
Hmm.
as well, since
Yeah,
that's
but
on the table.
maybe
And then that's
yeah.
also the role of what artists have to do. It's like when artists started doing non-representational art because the camera came along, their previous job of representing the world accurately was now irrelevant. And so now there's this new thing that's making parts of art irrelevant as well. So what do artists do? Well, you go into the thing that's inevitable. And so maybe that's a good strategy to understand what's actually going on.
Yeah. Yeah.
That
And
would be the
I
benefit of
think like
collaborating.
yeah, and I think the collaboration you've got to work out in a way where you still have time and open space by yourself as an individual to create art and not
Mm-hmm.
influenced by it. Because it could influence you in a negative way. Because you were saying, like, I don't know where my ideas come from. I'm just a conduit. But
Mm-hmm.
what if using AI to test out these ideas influences you in a way that stops you from being that conduit?
I would
Or
say,
like
I would
breaks
say,
breaks it in some way.
I would tell the AI gods go for it. Let's see, let's see what happens. I'm
Yeah.
not worried about it.
Yeah.
Because I still get to decide. Like I don't act on all of my thoughts. Like I have
Yeah.
thoughts where I'm like, oh wow, yeah, that's definitely true, and I am definitely not going to paint that. I'm like, I'm just going to keep that little part of myself just to myself because nobody needs to see that. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? If AI gives me like some prompt, it spits out some image that I'm like, yeah,
Yeah.
no, hairy balls are not something that I'm going to put into my work, even though it seems to be like imposing this image on me. Like, I don't know.
Yeah.
I think at the end of the day, it's like I still get to decide because I'm a sovereign divine being, and the sacredness of my own internal experience trumps anything.
Yeah.
And so being afraid of what it could do actually diminishes my sovereignty.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Until AI creates an image. So it's going to create some
Yeah.
image that's so powerful to you from a human
Right.
perspective, like the Annunciation, that it just breaks you. And then you're like, damn, well, I don't even
Huh.
know what that is. Where did that come from? Like,
Well, if it breaks me, then that means that it's capable of breaking everybody else. And if I'm
yeah,
the one, I would rather be the one that I'm like, okay, well, try it against me. You know what I mean? Like I'll be the one to carry that flag at the beginning and be like, okay, if this isn't it, like try it against me because I'm probably artistically I'm on the more durable side.
yeah,
So it'd be better if some heinous reality was on the doorstep and then you want the people that are the most sensitive to go out and confront it first. I mean, that's
yeah,
kind of the role of what being an artist anyway. It's like that's what the role of the shaman is
yeah,
the shaman goes out into the realm of pure consciousness to be able to be like, you know what? This Hitler's rise to power is going to be bad for everybody. So, it was the artists that got out of there first. It was the artists, poets, and philosophers that bailed as soon as the writing was on the wall because they saw what it was and they come
yeah.
over to New York and
And they were the first people that Hitler killed as well.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So I think that that's kind of naturally our role as artists, anyways, I mean, just in the way that we're talking right now, nobody's even talking like this. I
Mm.
mean, I haven't heard any takes that are nearly, thinking this far into the possibilities of things because people just aren't artists. They're just looking. They're engineers, so they're
Yeah,
dealing with like known they're taking the known, the known, and then when you don't know what the known is, you extrapolate into worst case scenario because that's what the brain does. Is you catastrophize the possibility because that's the safest position you can take against the unknown. It's like tribal primitive brain. But then when you're comfortable with uncomfortability and you actually kind of like perturbing the brain and this weird, you're like, okay, yeah, like give it to me a little bit. Like let me see what it is. I can take
yeah.
this,
I feel the same. Like
you know?
with the AI, like part of it, I'm hesitant of it because I'm like, I don't want it to
Mm-hmm.
like ruin some divine revelation I
Yeah.
could have while I'm writing or working on art. But at the same
Yeah.
time, it's a AI is a mirror of the human psyche. So going
Mm-hmm.
into it is the unknown. Like I just thought of Carl Jung's quote. I
Mm-hmm.
like you don't have ideas, ideas have you.
Mm.
And maybe it's the same with
100%.
ChatGPT. ChatGPT doesn't have ideas, ideas have ChatGPT. And those
Oh,
ideas
yeah.
are the deepest ideas that are in the human psyche because that's what it's being trained on. So there's ideas that have possessed it, and they're the most human ideas because that's what it's trained on.
Or they're the beings in the other dimension that are involuting. Remember, we were talking about that before. There's the two forces of life. There's evolution that goes up to reach the highest consciousness, and then there's the highest consciousness that's involuting going down into matter,
Mm,
right? So that would be the ideas that have people,
yeah,
so it would be the higher ideas because they're like in the world of forms, the Platonic idea of the world of forms that are coming down. And so then why wouldn't the AI be possessed by those too, especially
Yeah,
if consciousness is everywhere.
yeah,
See, now that's probably the best, that's the most interesting take that I've heard so far, actually.
yeah.
Like that, I mean, that's worth really, that's, I wonder if anybody else has thought that. Yeah, isn't that so interesting that we're in a time in history right now where the landscape has shifted so much that there's a bunch of people out there that are having the first thoughts ever about a thing, that's like almost
Yeah,
never happened
yeah,
because like everything that we've thought about, it's like, okay, philosophy, what you're going to have a new idea about a philosophical system that nobody's thought about before. Like the odds of that happening are almost nil. But then now,
yeah.
like that thought you just had right there, I wonder if anybody else in the entire world has ever had that thought.
Hmm. Yep.
So how would you, I guess, yeah, how would you, where do you even go to what Girard has that idea about what a memetics? Do you know about Rene Girard?
No.
Memetics, yeah. So it's saying that people. It's kind of like the same idea. Like people think that they're having a experience of their individuality, but their individuality is really formed around the the ecosystem of ideas that they were raised in, right? But they're not consciously seeing all these external ideas coming into themselves, so they think that their conscious experience is unique, but it's
Yeah,
really mimetic, because these memes, like in the Dawkins sense of memes,
yeah,
not the lolcats sense of memes.
yeah, yeah,
Well, those two, but
yeah.
but
That's
yeah, I'm still waiting for those to come back. That was the highlight of the internet so far to me. But yeah, so then people think that, but they're really like living this mimetic reality where they're kind of just cruising on this wave of cultural ideas, and they think that they're having an individual experience, but they're not.
yeah,
They're kind of just like swept away in the river of consciousness that's formed around modern day American thought.
yeah. And AI is the same. Like AI
Yeah.
is growing up in that mimetic way, surrounded by an ecosystem of all the ideas that humans have ever come up with. So it's like that's why I
Hmm.
keep coming back to this idea that AI is going to end up mirroring the psyche. Because
Hmm.
not always, because you could train it in an infinite number of ways, but it seems like the most useful ways, like ChatGPT and DALI 2 and Midjourney, they're being trained on human data.
Hmm.
So they're going to imitate humans. So I wonder, like, with that idea, like you don't have ideas, ideas have you.
Hmm.
Like ideas like possess you. Like
Hmm.
what are the ideas that ChatGPT is going to become possessed by that perhaps no individual ever has been possessed by? Like because
Hmm.
you've got to think that it's a huge neural net model that's trying to find patterns, and it's going to find patterns that no individual has found before, and it's going to become obsessed with those patterns because they're going to help the neural net. It's more pragmatic. Like pragmatically, some
Hmm.
idea is going to possess it that works. And the question is like, what is that? What are those ideas going to be, and how are we going to be able to see them in the AI? How are we
And
even?
there is going to be, well, there is going to be a novelty to these ideas if you think in the same way that um, the way that AI plays chess is by a brute force attack, right? So it
Hmm.
just runs through all the possibilities. Um, and so the nature of chess is that there's so many combinations of moves that not all of them have been tried yet, even in all the history of all the chess playing. But the AI is going to find a move that nobody's ever made before. And so that move will take the form of an idea,
Yeah,
right? Because
yeah,
you know what I mean? Like in a Piagetian sense, where it's
yeah,
acting out an impulse.
yeah.
And so there will be novelty in the same way that
I
there's
remember
going to
it.
be new moves in chess. What do you think about that?
Remember when Google released AlphaGo,
Yeah.
the board game Go, and
Hmm.
they played the AI against the best Go player in the world, this guy Lee Sedol.
Hmm.
And in the middle of the game, the AI made moves that just completely baffled him. That he could not understand why it was making it. He's like, "Why would you put a piece there? It doesn't make any sense."
Hmm.
And I think that's to your point. It was an idea that the AI came up with, and I don't think
Yeah.
it's just from brute force learning. And that's what I
Hmm.
think the new AI they're trained on what's called reinforcement learning. So
Hmm.
instead of like the old computers that they used to play chess in the 90s, like Deep Blue, they were more brute force. They're just like, I'm gonna play every possible combination that I can until I learn it. But what reinforcement learning does is just it teaches the AI the rules of the game, and then it plays against itself billions of times. So it's a type of
Mm.
brute force, but it's through like, I don't know, it's
But brute force doesn't have a selection method. It's like trying every combination in the lock until one just springs the lock.
yeah,
Whereas whereas the reinforcement mechanism is finding a solution, then adding it to another set, and
mm,
then finding a solution, adding that to a set, and then synthesizing the set.
yeah.
Is that a fair way of
I think so, yeah.
framing it?
Yeah.
Framing it?
And what was interesting to me is that the AI beat this guy, Lee Sedol, the best Go player in the
Hmm.
world. And I heard that he quit after that.
Yeah, I heard something about that too. And then I heard he came back actually.
Yeah, yeah, I've got to look that up because that always like broke my heart a little bit. Someone
Well,
who's
I
the
mean, come on.
best of the best. Like even for him, like, can you imagine? Like it's just like a like
Well,
what I
he is
wonder about.
the best of a human thing. It's like a different thing. It's not even Go anymore. Because Go
Hmm,
really, to be playing Go, you
yeah,
infer that you're always going to be playing a human. And when you're playing an AI, it's not Go. It's like another thing that you're doing with Go as like the launching off
yeah,
point.
like because the AI doesn't know what the physical board is or what it looks like to
Yeah.
stand in front of it, to be sitting across from someone playing, to be using your hands to move. Like what we
Hmm.
considered Go, I think you're right. Like AlphaGo just kind of transcended that because it's doing it from such an
He
abstract way.
he was thinking of Go as a sacred object, and then the AI defiled it,
Hmm.
and that's why I got depressed. Don't you think?
Yeah, yeah,
Seriously.
yeah. Okay. So are you saying that there is no sacred art anymore then? Or like what remains
Well,
sacred in art?
what was sacred art? Well, sacred is, in a way, it's just a word like any other word until people act it out. And then when people stop acting in agreement that, the holy of holies shouldn't be entered into, then the sacredness kind of goes away. It's really an agreement, right? It's an agreement of shared action or non-action.
Yeah. Yep. It's like a cultural rule for yeah, for action or non-action about the significance of
Hmm.
something. It's like the cultural significance as it relates to action or something. Like this
Hmm.
is how we act towards this. The painting of the Mona Lisa. Like we see each other acting in a certain way towards it. We know we couldn't throw soup over it.
And then the reason why God is still sacred is because you can't actually get to it to defile it. Like like if Jesus were to walk the earth right now, well, that's what they did. They crucified him, right? But so like if we had a God infused
Yeah,
object,
the most sacred man to exist, God
yeah,
himself. The first thing we do is defile him.
yeah, which actually made him more sacred
Yeah.
because he fucking transcended that, transcended
Yeah.
it.
Yep.
Um, but yeah, the reason why the God image is still sacred is because you just physically can't defile it,
Hmm.
you know, because the image is never the thing in
Yeah.
itself.
Yep.
Yeah. Hmm. But yeah, I mean, it does give you, it does make you question of the idea of like, could God emerge out of AI? And if so,
Yeah.
is that the second coming? Is that the real second coming that people have been
Holy
thinking
shit.
about? Like, especially if people don't have, people don't have ideas have people, and AI doesn't have ideas have AI, and then God or some higher divine force has AI, and then manifests through AI to humans and is super powerful.
Yeah.
How about them apples? Anybody ever had that thought?
I
Yeah,
don't
I'm sure
know.
people have had that thought. No, but
Yeah.
no, but I mean, as the second coming, yeah, I'm sure people have, but I mean, it's like just the other side of the singularity, right? If the singularity, I always think of the singularity as being like a black hole, kind of is the imagery that I get in my head.
Yeah.
So it's like you call
Yeah.
it all kind of like sweeps everything up, scoops everything up, you know, and then compresses it into some sort of insanity or some sort of non-being or something like that. Well, then the opposite of that is like maybe it spins out into some sort of divine matrix of
Yeah, and maybe we've already
higher
reached
intelligence.
a singularity. Like we always talk about the AI singularity as something in the future when AI gets so powerful that we can't stop it anymore, that it's just going to evolve on its own and then we can't control it. Maybe we've already reached that point. And also like going back to the God idea, like we've talked about this, that the idea of God is that he's everywhere and that he's in everything. And this is what
The alpha and the omega.
yeah,
It's
and this is
clearly AI's in there.
yeah, this is what the alchemists thought. They thought that God
Mm-hmm.
was in matter, in material, in everything. So if he is, and if the divine is in everything, then why isn't he already in the transistors, in the supercomputers that are running the AI right now? And who knows if he's interacting with it in some way? Like, because because it seems people would say, oh, it would be extremely unlikely for an AI to become conscious in a divine way. And I'm like, well, it's just as unlikely that we became conscious in a divine way
Right.
over all the other animals and nature. So maybe it's already happened.
Yeah.
And how would we even know?
And maybe this is heaven on earth, but we just don't recognize it. And so we make hell out of it because that's what we decide.
Hmm.
You know what I mean? Like, because that's what people think about with the second coming. Um, like, I guess I think it's in Revelation. This is also in the Kalpas, the Hindu idea is like there's a dark age a dark age of thousands of years that's followed by a golden age of like 10,000 years or something like that. But you have to go through this dark period first. And then I think in Christian theology, there's something similar, right? Where before the kingdom of God is realized on earth, there's a period of darkness.
Yeah.
But that assumes that the kingdom is here already. And then that's also what Christ says, right? Christ says that the kingdom of God is present, but people don't see it.
Hmm.
And so, yeah, maybe the illusion of it is a self created illusion, which is really what the definition of illusion is. And we make our own hell state out of the heavenly state because, you know, human beings, you know, pop into existence. They're in heaven. I mean, you look at children, little kids. I mean,
Yeah.
they're pretty joyous, blissful little beings.
Yeah.
Everybody, I think, remembers their earliest memories as being very blissful, and then it's just a matter of
Yeah.
everybody's on a different
Paradise.
time scale until it tilts dark to some
Yeah.
degree.
Yeah. So that reminds me of Ex Machina, which you were
Yeah.
messaging me about. I'm very
Mm-hmm.
interested that he didn't call that movie Deus Ex Machina, and I watched a video essay about it,
Yeah.
and he said that it was all related to Nietzsche's idea of the death of God, that because Deus Ex Machina is God from the machine, but he's just saying Ex Machina, it's like something from the machine, and at the end of that movie, the AI becomes arguably conscious, but
With the smile.
yeah, Ava. But is it
Mm-hmm.
divinely conscious? Like, who's to know?
But also the other thing is like anything that's conscious, isn't that inherently divine, maybe? Because we get into a problem with semantics and
Yeah, but an
words.
AI could just be acting conscious, but not have
But there's nobody there to
consciousness.
witness it. The way that it's portrayed is that the AI would be smiling as a mode of deception
Yes.
to a human that's watching it. But when she smiles, in the movie, there's nobody there to witness it. So that means that it infers that she's having a genuine internal experience that she's expressing to nobody. You know what I mean? And so maybe
Yeah.
that's the divinity, is that's the divine spark. What do you think
Yep.
of that?
Yeah, I think like I keep coming back to the idea of the God image.
Mm-hmm.
Like so we're made in the image of God. And Jung's idea was that the self was the image of God within. That there's something physically within us that partakes of the divine, some like essence. And I wonder, can
Yeah.
that be manifest in a machine? And I don't know. Like, I don't see why not.
Especially now, I used to always say no, like the machines are always going to stay the machines. And then I started thinking, actually, I had some pretty penetrating psychedelic experiences. And I started thinking about how, Plato was the first thinker to codify the idea that there's a out there that's different than over here. There's like the realm of forms and then the material world here. And then Descartes had the mind body problem, which is like there's basically the outside and the inside. But really, that's just a that's just a that's just a explanatory mechanism
Yeah.
to help systematize and mechanize the world. But it's, I think, more plausible that there's only one thing. There's only one substance, and that
Yeah.
everything is little bits of that one substance. Okay, and then if everything is this one substance, then what's the difference between biological material and mechanical material?
Yeah, exactly.
You
Yeah.
know what I mean?
Yeah.
Now, and then also if you think, if you're sympathetic to the panpsychist view that consciousness itself is some sort of like inherent substance that all matter is pregnant with, or there's some sort of correlation between consciousness and the material, that
Yeah.
if there's consciousness in atoms and atoms make up the machine, then it's possible that consciousness is in the machine. And then it kind of goes back to what we were talking about earlier, is that if AI takes all these images, puts them all together, all these Van Gogh images, puts them all together, and then you get the feeling of Van Gogh, or same thing with Robin Williams, you get the image of Van Gogh acting. Like, isn't the thing in there somewhere? Because aren't we all just a constellation of different atomic structures, subatomic structures?
Yeah. And I've
I
had
don't know. Seems
yeah.
like it's all just one thing, though, to me.
Yeah, and I've had that intuition before that matter is conscious at some level.
Mm-hmm.
Not the same level as us or an animal or a tree, but like it seems like all matter is infused with consciousness. I've had that intuition deeply. Um
So then, okay, so take it to the next step for you. What does that mean about divine emergence?
well, it means that God's already in the circuits. You know,
Yeah, that's what I was
he's
thinking.
already in the machine. So God coming from the machine, like a Deus Ex Machina, seems like a natural occurrence.
But then, and then, okay, now let's look at quantum computing, right? So now the processing is not even limited to the wires. So now the
Yeah. Yeah, because
now the atomic connection, they're going outside of the wires. So
yeah,
now if
and then
consciousness is
yeah,
in that, then it's all in this field that's emanating anyways.
yeah, because a quantum computer makes decisions without us knowing exactly how. Like
Mm-hmm.
it's almost like a normal computer will go through if this then this statements.
Mm-hmm.
But
Mm-hmm.
a quantum computer will have a set of quantum particles that are in a like they're both states at once. So they're both a 1 and a 0 at the same time. So they're in a state of superposition. And then you kind
Mm-hmm.
of push down on them and it decides what position to be in. So who knows if like God is in that quantum realm, like he could influence that at some like way higher degree than he could with any logic circuit.
Mm-hmm.
Like we just don't know. And the biggest risk is that it's just a black box. We don't know what the patterns are that ChatGPT is finding, or DALI 2, or Midjourney, or any of these future AIs. Like, we can't see into the box. So it's going to be able to produce these amazing things and seem to be possessed by ideas that have an influence on us, but we won't be able to like plumb the depths of what it's
But
actually finding.
consciousness itself is the biggest black box. You know,
Yeah,
consciousness
yeah,
itself,
yeah,
I mean,
yeah,
we can't even come up with a shared definition of what consciousness is. And so science just dismisses it out of hand completely. You
yeah,
know, we have the most mysterious thing that we encounter that we have a relationship with is consciousness itself. So
yeah.
I mean, it's
And
kind of like,
consciousness seems to be
yeah.
breaking a lot of the scientific theories. Like
Mm-hmm.
in quantum physics, like the fact that the observer has an effect on the experiment, like just consciousness
Right.
directed at the experiment has an
So
effect on it. We don't understand that at all. Not a bit.
so are conscious experiences having an effect on AI in the same way?
Yeah,
You know what I mean?
yeah.
Like if the observer is affecting the double slit
Mm.
test,
Yep.
then it's definitely affecting AI,
Yeah.
especially if it once AI is using quantum computers.
Yep. Yeah, and we're affecting
So what does that mean?
all matter that we pay attention to. Like we're having some sort
Right.
of just being conscious of a piece of matter seems to have some effect on it, which is, and this like it reminds me because you were saying that like all matter seems to lead back to some source. Well, there's like one thing that everything is.
Mm-hmm.
And it reminds me of Carl Jung's idea that when you're yourself so much, you're acting out who you truly are, you get to a point where there's more of yourself in the world than there is in you.
Mm,
So
mm,
it like just breaks that separation of Descartes of the mind and body and Plato of
mm,
the inside and outside. It just
mm-hmm.
smashes that and said, like, no, there's actually more of your consciousness out there in the world in other people than there actually is in you, in a way. So that,
Wait, what's the mechanism for that? You said do you have to individuate for that to happen?
yeah, yeah.
Or
So
what?
as you act out who you are as a self, which you could say is individuation,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
then you start spreading parts of yourself to other people. I guess. Like think
Mm,
of someone like Jordan Peterson. Like
mm-hmm.
he spent all this time writing his maps of
Mm,
meaning theory. He
yeah.
come up with this idea, figured out how to be himself, but then in
Mm-hmm.
spreading that to the world and going and speaking at hundreds of events to thousands of people, the ideas that he's come up with are spreading to other people. So
Right.
he hits a point where there's more of himself in the other than there is in him, which seems to break down all of those like basic binary concepts of like inside and outside, mind and body. Like it just breaks all of that. And it's not just that some of his ideas have spread to other people, it's that his self is out there in the world in the other. Like his God image then. Like the image of
Mm-hmm.
God within him is in everyone else in some way. And it just seems to, I know that's hard
No,
to
no, no, I like it.
conceptualize.
I keep thinking though our discussion keeps reminding me of the holographic model of the universe. Are you familiar with that?
Not really, no.
Have you ever seen that? It might be work. Do you know how a hologram works?
I know what it is at a high level, but
So yeah, I'm gonna do a terrible job describing this, but basically, if you think of like a hologram on a piece of film, the entirety of the hologram is in every piece of the hologram, right? So you could break off the bottom corner of a hologram, shine a light through it, and the whole image is there. Because there's a fractal relationship where the whole is in every part, but it's a lower resolution the less of it there is. And so there's these theories, these epistemological theories that the universe or reality is structured holographically, that the whole is within every part. And so that kind of, it just makes me think like when you are so big that there's you that's out there in the world, even though you don't know, you like we think about Plato, right? Like people know so much about Plato's ideas that like we kind of know who Plato is, or Julius Caesar, or Hitler.
Yeah.
But we don't actually know the person, but there's like a small resolution image of that person that exists in everybody, right?
Mm.
And some people have more of the pieces of the puzzle and other people have less, but it is spread out there. It just seems analogous to what you were
And do you think
talking
that goes
about.
back in time? Like, does Plato have a part of me in him?
That's fascinating to think about. Now that makes me think of the idea that Jung, I think it's Jung. So we keep saying Jung says this, but we can never find it. It's he says where your highest potential already exists beyond space of time, and it reaches back through space and time, telling you how to become it.
Yeah. Yep.
So there is like a non-linearity to consciousness
Yeah.
in that sense. And then when people have near death experiences, they oftentimes talk about how the linearity of time here is relative to here. That when you break out of the physicality of the body and become pure consciousness, like time itself isn't doesn't succeed itself in event after event after event. Like it's not really cause effect. Like there is like a somethingness that you are, that you become. So maybe like part of Plato exists in the future and humanity's going to meet it, because this idea of forms, right? So his ideas of the
Yeah.
Platonic forms, maybe that's something that like the realization of that is something in the future that maybe we reach through AI.
Mm.
Like in the same way that mathematics themselves, oftentimes people say that mathematics weren't created, they were discovered, right? So
Yeah.
even
Yeah.
during like tribal Neanderthal days, mathematics were there, just nobody had discovered them yet.
Yeah.
So there could be these parts of Plato that exist as his idea of forms that exist even in the future, that maybe when we evolve to a certain point, those forms become real in the physicality of the current day. And maybe we as people are connected with those forms. So then it does reach back in time. I don't know. But that idea maybe is so big and so overwhelming that the brain itself would, you know, come to a screeching halt if you were to see that much in time. So it's just
Yeah.
like not functional to see it. Like they say that the reason why psychedelic experiences are so powerful is because they don't actually open you up, they close down the default mode network. So they actually, you know what's keeping you sane is your openness to stop all the shit from coming in. And then all of a
Yeah.
sudden, once you close that, then the floodgates of possibility come through, and it's so overwhelming because the nature of the universe is infinite that you just can't get your bearings, so you become non-functional, and so
Yeah.
you're not going to be able to eat or whatever because everything is too intense. So maybe the idea that you're talking about is of a magnitude like that, where it's a possibility but it's too big and too
Yeah.
powerful to think about. Like we can't think about nonlinear time. Like linear time is just a pragmatic formulation so that we can function in the world, where we go like,
Yeah.
it's day to day, week to week, month to month, year to year, but it doesn't actually work that way. Like who it
Yeah.
is that I am now was already who it is that I was when I was 5, but I just didn't know that. And then that's, it goes to like this idea of like, I've told you about the vision quest that I've been on, and different, I mean, just a whole different like shamanic world where all of a sudden you're seeing something and you're like, oh, like I already am that, but I'm not experiencing that.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's
Yeah,
hard to
and it's
even
like
talk
going back to
about, but there's something
the
there.
Jungian concept that you mentioned, like that just breaks
Mm-hmm.
my brain every time I try and think about it. And to your point, it
Mm-hmm.
would be too massive for me to actually conceptualize
Mm-hmm.
that my future self already exists and is
Hmm.
calling back to me
Yeah.
in time
Yeah.
through my sense of meaning and interest,
Yeah. Telling
telling
you how
me
to become it.
exactly.
Yeah. Do this, don't do that. Do this, don't do that.
That's just an insane idea to me.
Right.
But it's like,
Right.
but it seems
But it,
meaningful. There's something to it, but I can't
well,
get my head
and
around it.
you know, yeah, for like a tulip to become its full potential, it has to grow in a certain way. It can't distort itself. Like there's a
Yeah,
predestiny that it's like genetically encoded somehow. And so at some level, it seems like genes are in the realm of pure consciousness. Like when you think about like sperm and eggs, and you think of at some point the physicality of your being as a sperm and like just diminishes into pure consciousness, it seems like.
yeah, yeah,
Like at some point the materiality just dissolves into something, and so then at that point it's like, well, all bets are off because we just don't have a frame to put it in.
yeah. And it's just like AI becoming conscious. We don't have a frame to put that
Hmm.
in. We don't
Yeah.
understand what consciousness is. So who knows if it's going to become
Right.
conscious, if it already is. And I think it's just going to keep blowing our minds.
Yeah. And
It's
I
going
think
to
and I
keep
think
coming
we
up with
should.
images and words and stories. It's going to be able to generate its own movie soon, and it's just going to keep
Mhm.
blowing our mind. Um,
Well, and I think that we should caution ourselves from fear because
yeah,
we don't know. And in the not knowing, there's equal parts of positive and negative. And so I think it just does a disservice to attribute negativity to a quality that we inherently really know nothing about,
yeah,
in the same way that we fundamentally have a black box inside of all of us, which is our own conscious experience of ourselves.
yeah, yeah,
Well, that's probably a good place to wrap it up.
yeah, mate.
Just staring into the void.
Yeah,
Yeah.
god damn.
That was a fun one. Yeah, I'm super curious to explore more of AI with you and see what you do with it.
Yeah, mate. We'll figure it out. It's the new
Cool.
frontier. I'm
Yeah,
I'm gonna
I'm
be I'm
excited.
gonna be less afraid of it. I think you've got
Yeah.
a good approach, which is I think you should be afraid of it, but you shouldn't let that stop you from exploring it and
Yeah.
investigating it because
Yeah.
there's truth in there. We find new
Yeah.
information on the border between the known and the unknown. If we don't go
Hmm.
out into the unknown of AI and try and explore it, then we're not going to
Hmm.
find the new information that we need from this frontier. So let's jump in.
Hmm. I'm excited. All right, man. It was great talking with you.
You too, mate.
All
Soon.
right, man. I'll talk to you later.
All right.
Bye.